Hi folks, this is all the fruit, and today I want to do some foraging in Heidelberg, Germany. I said in one of my last videos that I'm not gonna do so many foraging videos anymore because hardly everybody is ever watching them. Yeah, I know, somebody will comment, I always watch them. Yeah, but you are not like 10,000 people, and it takes me about half a day to take such a video, while a short species video just takes me a couple minutes. But still, you liked a very small community likes those videos, so I'm doing one more. We are in the last days of August here in Heidelberg, Germany, zone probably 8A USDA, in a year where the winter was kind of harsh, the spring was cold and wet, and basically the whole year was quite wet. So the first year for quite some time without a drought. We'll start here at the Adenauer Platz in Heidelberg, then go through the about 100-year-old neighborhood of Weststadt, and then arrive at the 21st century neighborhood of Bahnstadt. Let's see what we have here on the Adenauer Platz. Well, apart from the giant bamboo, which is good for sprouts in spring, we have a very special mulberry tree here. It's a white mulberry tree, and the white mulberry tree with white fruits in this case. They come in all colors, from white through pink and purple to black. If you look at this one, there are a lot of fruits on the ground, which is very unusual in August for mulberries in Germany. Mulberry season is mostly June. You get them in very warm years, the 1st at the 8th of April, and you can have some throughout July, but August is quite unusual. And this tree sometimes fruits well into September or even October. Very sweet, but no sourness. Yeah, even those quite dodgy looking ones on the ground are quite good. Towards the end of this week, I want to lead a fruit collector through Heidelberg to collect cuttings from rare and special and unique trees. And this is one of the trees I'll suggest to him. A mulberry which fruits in late summer. Very unusual. I've seen one similar one which was planted just last year in Mannheim. A mulberry with black fruits, though still probably Morus alba, which ripens even later than this one. It should be ripe about now. But still, it's quite a rare thing, and extending the fruit season of a special fruit by several months is of course a very valuable contribution to world fruit cultivation. Physalis alkekegi. This is the only Physalis grown in Germany traditionally on a large scale as an ornamental, because of those really conspicuous orange fruits, which even keep their beautiful color if you dry them carefully. Well, this one has started rotting already. It's not completely sure. Oh, okay. It's not completely sure whether they originate from the Balkans or from China. They are feral populations in Germany. The Germans think they are not edible, but usually they produce quite big, bright orange fruits inside those orange calyxes. However, either I'm still very early in the season or something happened to this one, because it's quite small. Yeah, the Germans think this is slightly bigger. Yeah. That's what the ripe fruit is supposed to look like. The Germans think they are poisonous, and in a lot of old literature they also consider poisonous, but also medicinal. However, it seems, according to a lot of other sources, that they are totally edible. This fig tree here, or fig bush here, used to be the biggest in all of Heidelberg at some time about 10 years ago. It was basically the size of the house in the background, but if you look at it now, it is considerably smaller. You see the fruits, they don't look too great. There is a chance it could be a male Capri fig, but I rather think it's a female one, but one of those watery, very productive but very watery, not very sweet varieties. So why was it the biggest fig in Heidelberg 10 years ago and now it's not? Well, this one, oh, here by the way, a small old historic German cart. Nowadays people like to put them in their gardens, and this has fallen apart, and a beautiful historic monument. This used to be a legitimate mode of transport 70-80 years ago, often pulled by people, and now, yeah, they are decaying. Well, anyways, this was planted in the 20th century, and back then you would plant figs in Germany along south-facing walls. Look, a south-facing wall. That means the fig is being insulated from the south and insulated from the north. Yeah, English language is quite stupid. Insulation means the sunlight comes in. So it was insulated by the sun from the south. And isolation means it was isolated from the cold winds by the house. However, nowadays in the English language often they say insulated from the cold. Well, so this fig was always insulated by the sun from the south and insulated by the house from the north, which means two completely different things, but they contribute to the same thing, that this was a very good place for growing a fig. Figs grow very fast, and they would damage the foundations of the house, but back in the 20th century they would freeze back about every 1 or 2 years. And growing them on the southern side of the house made them freeze back a little bit less. And back then, because of the frequent freezing, they would never reach a size that would damage the house. But now, I guess, not only were the roots too powerful, but also the unstable stems were so tall that there was a danger of them falling to the street. But they cut it back a couple years ago, and now it's grown again to 7 or 8 meters and producing a lot of those not very tasty figs. Right on the other side of the street, yeah, here is the last fig I was talking about, is a typical fig of the 21st century. Well, a more typical fig of the 21st century, something nobody would have attempted, or at least nobody would have achieved in Germany in the 20th century before climate change. I think that this is probably a feral tree. Not a seedling from this one, because the fruits are very different. They are bigger and dark and tastier. But it's been growing right there under the wall. It's possible it was planted back then in a typical location along a wall. This time not a south-facing one, but the south-facing one here is right at the sidewalk. But then it was grown as a tree with just one stem. This just wouldn't have worked here in the 20th century, because it would have frozen, because down here next to the wall the temperatures in winter are a lot milder than up here in the air. But now, yeah, this has grown to a considerable size too. So very typical here, a typical tree, a typical German fig tree of the 20th century, and one that maybe started as a typical German fig tree of the 20th century, but then became a very unique German fig tree, very unique for Germany of the 21st century. I like that they are right opposite each other. Let's stay for a little bit in this garden, or rather let's not go into this garden because it's closed off, but look at this. There is a cherry plum, a yellow cherry plum hanging full of fruits. Oh, and so many are on the ground. Yeah, almost reachable through the door, through the gate. Well, the cherry plum, one of the most important ancestors of modern cultivated plums, and in my opinion, the most underrated fruit of Europe. It's a plum, it tastes like a plum, but it grows like a wheat. So in normal years, nobody would care about it. However, when you get a year when there are no plums and no other fruits, people would come and start harvesting it. Oh, I'm being watched. Whenever you are filming, the Germans are watching. Okay, this is an old lady, let's not give her a heart attack. Well, cherry plum, wonderful plum with a very extended fruiting season. From May, sometimes all the way to September or even October, or once in Vienna I saw one with perfectly edible fruits even in November. Great fruit and the most underappreciated fruit in all of Europe in my opinion. Also very good to make rakia or slivovica or any other alcoholic drink. Behind it, by the way, the red or purple leaves, that's a purple ornamental variety of the cherry plum, which is just as edible as the original one. Oh, look at that. Right where I put my bike, there are two ferns. Dryopteryx filixmas and Phylitis scolopendrium. Phylitis scolopendrium is a very interesting climate indicator, growing around here usually in mild areas, but especially in moist areas. And we had a lot of drought during the last couple years, so I guess a lot of those things on walls and in forests and so died. But here inside the drain, it seems it was shady and moist enough for this plant to survive. Ferns are great climate indicators, just like a lot of other plants. So it's always useful to observe not only the fruit trees, but also other plants, just to find out what the climate and the weather, and this interesting word the German have, Witterung. Well, climate is like the climate of the last 1,000 years. Weather is the weather of the last 3 days, but the Germans have one in between, the Witterung. That's like the weather of 1 year or maybe 2 years or maybe half a year. A very interesting additional word which should exist in other languages, because yeah, for fruit trees, yeah, the weather of the last couple days or weeks is important. The general climate for decades or centuries in an area is important. But for the current fruit harvest, basically the Witterung, or the weather/climate of the last 6 months to 1.5 to 2 years are most crucial. And so yeah, interesting to find this survivor here after a couple years of severe drought. 2 Judas trees. Every part of this fabaceae is toxic except for the flowers, which are incredibly tasty. But right now I'm not so interested in the Judas trees, also not in the free clothes here. Yeah, this is a very good thing that came up in Germany in the last couple of decades. If you have free stuff, you put it out in the street and put up a sign zu verschenken. You can do that with clothes, with dishes, with drainage pipes, yeah, whatever. And another thing, another good thing around here is a stinging mosquito trap. And I guess for bees and other such animals, they've put up this little plank over which they can escape. And here also in the last drought years, it became very common to put those water bags around the trees. But I'm not here for those, I'm here for foraging. So let's see what we can find here in the quite neglected spots around the trees. Chelidonium maius, a plant with orange sap. Well, stay away from plants with white, yellow, and especially orange sap. They're really toxic. This one is so toxic and so caustic that it's actually being used to remove stuff like moles and warts and such thing. You put a drop of it on your skin at a spot where you have a mole or a wart or something, and after some time it completely kills them and makes them fall off. Just don't eat it, it's very toxic. Next to it, catnip. If you have a cat and do this, your cat is gonna love you. Well, cannot blame them, it's a nice smell. Next to them, wonderful black nightshade. I was afraid to eat this as a child, despite knowing a couple botanists which told me it's edible. It's basically like a small tomato, It's a close relative of the tomato. The fruits are raw when not completely ripe, and a lot of people think they are raw even when ripe. The taste is similar to a tomato. Maybe less sweet and less sour and more umami. Also, nightshades are a great climate indicator, especially for the Witterung. You can grow them in areas with very cold winters, if the summer is long and warm enough, like in Alaska and Canada and Washington and so on. Such areas, I think they are being used as a legitimate fruit plant. But here, since I tend to spend the winter away from Germany, when I come back in spring, I have different methods to find out how harsh the winter was. I can check the weather forecast, which also in most websites has a backwards function. I can ask people, or I can observe nature. And I remember, after a couple really mild winters, right here in this street, I picked ripe black nightshade in March. Bah. Okay, this was a rotten bunch. And those plants around here, most of the tips were frozen, but at the lower branches there were ripe fruits and leaves in March, which told me that those winters had been very mild, with almost no frost in the city. But later I got winters where only the roots of the nightshade survived, and this spring when I came back, I did not find a single nightshade even in the most protected areas where even the roots survived. So it was quite a harsh winter with long... Uh-oh, the Germans are closing the windows when the naked barbarians are invading. Yeah, it was a very good climate indicator, telling me that this winter was particularly cold. Next to it, some sort of wild millet. I don't know if it's edible, probably it's theoretically edible, but too small. A wild amaranthus. See them, little black seeds, those are edible, and also the leaves are edible as a salad. Lamb's quarters, also edible and tasty. And despite having some rain in the last night, you see that the lamb's quarters leaves are hanging down, because the last week or two are quite hot and dry. And here somebody has planted a little lavender plant. Here a particularly tasty mulberry variety with those very conspicuous, very different looking leaves. But of course the season has been over for many weeks now. Here we have a very special loquat tree, which often has fruits still in August and even into September. But I guess in hot, dry years, not in this year. I see a couple black shriveled up fruits on it, so it did have fruit still pretty late. Let's see, is there maybe some black shriveled up fruit lying on the ground? Nope. Yeah, but quite unusual. It's basically the loquat tree around here which has the latest fruits anywhere. However, this catalpa here, which was definitely not planted, is starting to overshadow it. I mean, at the beginning it used to be kind of a little bit of a protection from the cold northern winds, but now it's getting a little bit too overzealous. Here a nice little garden in pots. Last year I found a couple quite rarish looking tomato varieties here. A fig, a rhubarb, a tree chestnut growing in this pot. A cactus, this is definitely going indoors. Not so many tomatoes and other fruits and veggies. Oh, hi big kitty. Strawberries, blueberries, agapanthus. 2 tomatoes this year. Yeah, 3, 4 tomatoes. Well, not as many as last time, but still interesting. This here could be a wineberry, not sure. The kitty is still here, and you see those big fruits the kitty is walking amongst? Oh. What are those fruits, kitty? Kitty, 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 kitty. What are those fruits? Are they kitty toys? Are they kitty toys? Okay, kitty doesn't want to play. Well, those are 3 hazelnuts. Hazelnuts usually grow on a shrub. However, there is at least 1 species in Europe, the tree hazelnut. And this whole street here coincidentally, not accidentally, but coincidentally has been planted with 3 hazelnuts. And now their season is starting. In a couple of weeks or months, the whole street will be buried in their fruits, and there will be a strong smell of oil which is getting rancid because the cars have crushed so many of the fruits. Incredible harvest. From this street alone, probably you could harvest about a ton of 3 hazelnuts. Most Germans don't even know that those things are edible. I mean, the plant looks very different from a normal hazelnut bush. Look at it, they're hanging full. A lot of trees have a bumper year now after a couple years of drought. Others are still recovering from the drought, but those have a bumper year. They're coming from Southeast Europe, from very dry continental places, so they can deal with the droughts. They don't need an additional year to recover. Yeah, a lot of Germans don't know they are edible. The tree looks different. The fruits look different. Show us the fruits, kitty. Show us the fruits, kitty. Here are the fruits, kitty. Good kitty. The fruits look very different from normal hazelnuts. The nuts, which are one of the few true nuts, because, yeah, basically those are the fruits. Yeah, maybe I said it wrong. Those are the calyxes. While those are the fruits, that means they are true nuts, unlike 90% of the other nuts we call nuts. They look very different, they even taste different, but they are totally edible. They can serve as a very good staple. You can harvest them throughout the winter because because of their hard shell, it takes them very long to rot. However, yeah, they are not really popular as a nut tree here in Germany. Also, they have very good strong timber, which is also not popular as a timber in Germany. Why? They say, well, because the standard German or Austrian forced botany book of the late 19th century just omitted them, probably by mistake, really by omission. And so they are not really present in German forestry tradition, German/Austrian. The Austrians are just Germans, not like the Dutch who are drunk swamp Germans and have a slightly different language. The Austrians are Germans, period. Yeah, ostracize me for that, Austrians, ha ha ha. Oh well, what I wanted to say, that's why those things are missing in German/Austrian forestry tradition. But the timber is still very sought after and hard to get because nobody planted forests of this really hard timber for a century. The little community garden of the Weststadt. A lot of those community gardens were started like 10 years ago. This was the biggest and best organized. Basically, the city made all the infrastructure for them. It's also the only one I think has survived. Although the community doesn't seem to be too active now. A lot more weeds than planted plants. Melissa. Wonderful smell of lemons and limes. Borago officinales. It is a salad/herb, which I still cannot believe because of those hairy leaves. Unotera, also used to be an important vegetable. Every part of the plant is edible: fruits, flowers, seeds, stems, leaves, but the root is the big treat, but nobody's using it nowadays. Dandelion, also edible. Here we have St. John's wort, a very phototoxic plant, good against winter depression. It helps your skin absorb more sunlight, something you don't want to do in summer, but something that can be good in winter. So you harvest the flowers in summer and you drink the tea in winter. Here's some mustard, all those are edible. You can see that this year is not such a drought year because everything is still quite lush, even in late August. I always forget the name of this flower. Here used to be very popular in Bulgaria where I was a kid, but I still forget the name. Grapes in the background. The Cornell cherry season is going towards its end. Saskatoon has been in season months ago. Different roses, some of them with quite tasty and big rose hips. This could be the apple rose, for example. Bearberries, however, I think they planted the non-edible German wild bearberries. Also, yeah, the tomatoes, yeah, the community is kind of falling apart because the garden is mint, sunflowers, one sweet potato, a couple beans. It doesn't look that well alive. And also here, the bananas, also a good indicator for the Witterung of the last couple months. It shows us that we had a late, cold and wet spring, because towards the end of August, in a hot year, those things would be 1 meter taller. Raspberries over there. Oh well, now it's my raspberry. Jerusalem artichoke, Mirabilis jalapa, and some rhubarb. A very rare little spurge used to grow right here. I discovered it like 15 years ago. I published the discovery, and once every 2 or 3 years I come here to check on it. Oh yeah, here it is. My precious. Look at this super prolific raspberry branch. Oh, what a pity. Half a handful of those nice fruits are lying on the ground. And here, look at that. Oh, wow. Yeah, raspberries are usually a spring fruit. But of course, raspberries with an extended season have been selected over the time. My favorite of all rubus species. Nothing beats a good raspberry flavor. Around here we have, in the exotic forests of Weinheim, I found raspberry bushes still fruiting profusely in November, which is quite an achievement. Now we're at the end of August. That's still not bad. And next to them, of course, the invasive and not tasty, not edible Indian strawberry. Blah. Purslane, the favorite salad of the ancients. Speak of the ancient Romans and Greeks. It's very healthy, very tasty. Probably hear a lot of doggies peed on it. Very good for your digestive system and for a lot of other health reasons. Why was it their favorite salad? Romans and Greeks used to, and still do 2000 years later, collect a lot of wild salads. And in the Mediterranean has wet winters and dry summers. In the Mediterranean you can collect tons of tasty salads in winter. But in summer, usually you have to water everything. If you want to collect wild salads, it's quite difficult. However, one plant, the purslane, would grow even in Mediterranean and semi-desert and desert climates. After one strong rain, a couple weeks later you'll be able to eat this stuff. So it was one of the very few wild salads, wild vegetables available in summer, and that's why it became the favorite salad and medicinal food of the ancients. Linden or lime trees, every part is edible. The flowers, which are usually made into tea, the inner bark, while there are also layers of the bark which are very good for ropes and clothes, the young leaves, especially the fruits, which I've never eaten. I think here right now Yeah, the unpollinated fruits are being shed. Let's see. And they are still the good pollinated fruits, which need to grow a couple more weeks until they can be harvested. Nice oily fruits with big seeds. Well, the seeds are oily. But for some reason, yeah, that's the funny thing. In Bulgaria, we relied to a very high extent on foraging, but we had a very limited amount of things we would forage, not so much foraging knowledge. For example, we all knew that you could make nice tea from the linden flowers, but we didn't know that the fruits are edible. A late out of season wisteria, and quite an ancient vine too. This thing at the base is about as thick as I am. Every part is toxic, apparently apart from the flowers, but I'm not sure. This spring I wanted to do some experiments with them. Well, if I'm not too lazy, it's not too late for that. This out of season vine will provide me with enough flowers for some culinary attempts. Very prolific nightshade foraging here, but it's not why I stopped. Stopped because of the feijoa. This is maybe the last fruit shrub which was introduced here in large quantities during the last years only. Wonderful edible flowers and edible fruits. However, flowering season is over, so I should be seeing fruits everywhere. Oh, there are a few on the lower branches. Why? I mean, it flowered late enough to be safe from all the bad events in spring, but look, there are fruits only on the lowest branches, nothing on the upper branches. Well, one on the upper branches, but still, most of them on the lower branches. Okay, no plentiful foraging here. I know more plentiful areas in the city, but this is a fruit for October. The German medlar, a fruit which is not truly German, but it used to be cultivated in Germany on a significant scale. Now it's cultivated mostly as an ornamental fruit for November. And here are a couple of honey locusts. The goo inside the giant pots usually tastes disgusting. Here we have a couple small premature pots dropping. Usually it tastes disgusting, but when you are lucky, maybe getting a good genetic specimen at exactly the right stage, it tastes more or less like, yeah, kiwi jam. But in 80% of all cases where I've tried this stuff, it was disgusting. Stupid modern technology. Firethorn used to be a very popular plant in parks and gardens in the 20th century until too many gardeners complained about the horrible thorns. Now it's more rare. Why did nobody ever tell us that the fruits are edible? A bit boring. A bit sour with a slight apple flavor, but you can harvest giant quantities in most city parks, and you could harvest even more decades ago when the stuff was more common. Here we have a rucola, Diplotaxis tenuifolia. I remember how we would collect this wheat in our garden in the 90s. Well, all my classmates' parents used to buy it in small tiny little boxes, which cost like 10-15 Deutschmark for like 100 grams or so. Incredible prices, until enough people learned that it actually grows wild in Germany. But for some time there were farms which made a fortune on a wheat. Quite a strange taste. I don't like it too much. I can eat it while it's still young, but there are people who like it. They will eat even the old bitter stems and leaves. Quite strange. It's a mustard. Now we are in the Bahnstadt, a 21st century modern suburb, which was built on top of an old train station. So the parks and everything are of a very modern concept. Here the street light is being used by a kiwi. I totally approve of that. A lot of ornamental apples. They might be ornamental, but they are tasty enough once they are ripe. And here they have planted a lot of different varieties. That's good. Also figs. I always approve of that. What else do we have here? I guess this is supposed to be a playground. It's a bit meager for a playground, folks. I don't know, man. A playground with two features. That's not a lot. Here another ornamental apple, but with much bigger fruits, and it seems they ripen earlier. Yeah, not bad. And this might be one of the smallest bee hotels I've ever seen. A street of mulberry trees. I totally approve of that. This is all the white mulberry, but a lot of different colors, from white through pink through purple, and different tastes. The only problem is that with most trees, the branches are just too high. Think a little bit about the foragers, folks. Don't cut all the... Okay, I shouldn't complain. You know what I did today? I cut all the low-hanging branches from many trees on campus as food for the gorillas, and also so that our lawn mowers can pass more easily. So after cutting low-hanging branches for hours, I shouldn't complain that gardeners here cut the low-hanging branches. But yeah, we are never happy, are we? Now look at that. A tiny garden with lots of fruits. Spineless blackberries. Of course, this year we had a bumper crop, but because of the frequent rains, most blackberries rotted away, so I couldn't really enjoy them. You need the wet year, and then when a particular fruit starts to ripen, you need a couple dry weeks. Didn't work out completely with the blackberries. Laurel cherries. Those apple trees are growing in quite a strange way. More apple trees, grapes, and raspberries in the background. The Portuguese laurel cherry, one of the most bitter cherry species I've ever encountered. And don't get me wrong, I like cherries which are a bit bitter, but this is just too much. Not completely ripe, meaning it's even more bitter. Only came up here like in the last 10-15 years. Before that, the German climate was considered too harsh for this species, but climate change, well, changes things. Another small community garden here, better maintained, but it used to be bigger and it used to have a lot more veggies. Now it's mostly flowers and herbs. Well, here a couple carrots, a sunflower, which is a flower and the seed plants too. Oh yeah, and somebody has been harvesting the seeds. I wonder if this is a bird or a human or what. You know how the foreigner test in Germany goes? Let me show you. If you know how to eat those, then you are not a German, but a foreigner. Guess? I passed the test. What else do we have in the community garden? Couple Brussels sprouts, a hazelnut. The Brussels sprouts are a winter vegetable, so those are the little drumstick cabbages of the Brussels sprout here, those purple little buds. Apart from that, more sunflowers, some dwarf form, And a lot of strawberries. Of course, the season has been over for quite some time. And what's this mint? Good stuff. Good mint. And lavender. A lot of the young families who moved here are planting a lot of fruit trees. Here, a fig tree. We are now in August. We are between the time of the breba or summer figs and the autumn figs. We had good figs in July until the first weeks of August. Now we'll have about 1 month without figs, and then the autumn figs are starting. All those will be ripe in autumn. Here some kakis, some more figs, Himalaya palms, which are also edible, tomatoes, ever-bearing strawberries, kiwi berries, and olive, more figs, and the balconies are just as loaded. The oaks are very interesting. This here should be Quercus robur, or the German oak. Well, all the acorns are infected. No decent fruits this year. Yeah, but nothing unusual to see the German oak growing here. What is unusual, however, is the Mediterranean cork oak. Yeah, this thing was used, well, it was the only decent way to close wine bottles for thousands of years, and also it was used for a lot of other things. Basically, it was the styrofoam of the ancient Mediterranean. The fact that it grows here is quite amazing, because until recently the climate in Germany was too harsh for such Mediterranean trees. Also, I would have expected that the soil here is too rich in lime for this tree, but nope, it's growing and it's thriving. Some amateur foragers confirming that this is a fig. Yeah, this is a fig. Whenever I'm here, I like to check on one of my old projects. I said that the rail town or rail city, it was built on a big train station. Actually, when the train station was abandoned about 20 years ago, I camped out here for a couple weeks in summer. Wonderful area. Hectares of beautiful flowers, thousands of lizards and so on. And then when they started to build the city, I transplanted a lot of the rare weeds from the train station, and also a couple of the common ones here to this place. No, this was not a guerrilla action. I got paid, and paid okay-ish for the work. And now I'm checking. Right here I cannot see too much of my old work from 15-ish or more years ago. Yeah, the Hieracium pilosella, probably I put it here. Don't know if I put this stuff here, but most probably I put some of the sedum here. More Hieracium. Yeah, this looks totally like I have planted it. But there are better areas. And here the Buddleia davidii, very invasive plant, used to be typical before the climate change just for railroad areas, because the dry and hot environment of this gravel was perfect for it. Now it's common in all types of habitats. Back then we had a big discussion. I didn't want it here, but the insect fanciers wanted it here. And since we had to save not only the weeds but also the insects and lizards, actually all this was made 99% for the lizards and a little bit for the weeds and the insects. Yeah, since we wanted to save the insects too, it was planted here. The compromise was let it flower, but then afterwards prune it before the fruits ripen. And it seems even almost 20 years later they are still trying to do this. Those things are being pruned every year, not cut to the ground but pruned. Maybe this is still a result of our ancient compromise we made here. Leave the flowers for the people and for the insects, but prevent the fruits from spreading. Oh, here we have a blackberry, but the blue blackberry, Rubus caesius. Kind of a purplish, slightly unusual variety of Rubus caesius, but definitely caesius. I don't think that caesius has been plucked apart like Rubus fruticosus. The blackberry, the German A small group of German botanists claim that there are like 2,000 to 4,000 different blackberries in Germany. But the raspberries and the blue blackberries and the wineberries and so, they have left them alone. So I think this can still be called Cesius. A nice herbal garden here. Beautiful. Fruit trees. A mulberry and here a Prunus mahaleb. Also a couple Scots pines and black pines with edible seeds. More kiwi berries. Haha. Smoke bush. I have to tell a story about this, a story about myself and this bush. The fruits are not figuring prominently in this story, but I still think it's funny and some of you will enjoy it. Here another blackberry, Rubus laciniatus. Oh, and actually, oh, that's actually quite interesting. This is a spineless Rubus laciniatus. Look at that. The leaves are laciniate and the stem is spineless. However, here some stems are reverting to being spiny. Look, a spineless and a spiny stem next to each other. Very interesting. Or maybe they planted two different varieties, but they had a big population of Rubus inermis, the spineless blackberry without the laciniate leaves in the Neckar Valley, which over the years turned spiny. And here I'm seeing something which could be a similar thing, except, as I said, except if they planted two different varieties of laciniatus next to each other. Let me try and find some more traces of my ancient work. Yep, definitely planted those areas here with rare weeds. Just 3 or 4 years ago I could still see some pretty well preserved plantations I made here. I don't know if I'm just in an area which is less well preserved now, or if it's because of the wet spring, of the wet year. But if you have told me that I have done this even decades ago, I would be in doubt. Cichorium intubus. This is the chicory and radicchio, two kind of Italianish vegetables, winter vegetables, which are bred from this one. And also until the 1950s, this was the dominant coffee in Europe and also in most of the US. It was, yeah, a brown bitter drink, cheap enough. Maybe 5 or 10% of the total population could afford real tropical coffee back then. So everybody would drink this here. It's incredibly bitter. Another of those little herbal / flower gardens. This was Toicrium chamedrus, a herb we used to collect in Bulgaria, but here in our area of Germany it's so rare that I'm trying to preserve it wherever I find it. Here of course it's planted, but still nice to see it. Also a lot of other flowers. The flowering season is going towards its end, of course. It's the end of August, but still looking beautiful. Oh yeah, I definitely have to tell this story. Write in the comments if you want to hear the story how the naked savage brought the big stinker on the Orient Express. More beautiful little gardens behind this high wall. Here a Physalis, most probably Peruviana, an olive. Here again German oak, and here something climatically very interesting. This is the Mediterranean holm oak. Basically the Mediterranean has a plant diversity as high as the most biodiverse rainforest areas in the world. Interestingly, an animal diversity which is lower than the rainforest, but the plant diversity just as high as the rainforest areas, which is extremely strange because traditionally the Mediterranean vegetation, all the way from southern France to northern Africa and from Spain all the way to Palestine, was dominated by this one species, the holm oak. And actually we say wherever this thing dominates the natural vegetation, we have a Mediterranean climate. Nobody would have planted this stuff here 30 years ago. It would have been too cold. Now that it grows here, does it mean we have a Mediterranean climate? Well, it hasn't spread and taken over the complete vegetation yet, so no. But we have a sub-Mediterranean-ish climate now after climate change, which is quite similar to parts of the Mediterranean. Very important plant indicator, this one. The other indicator for Mediterranean climate is the olive tree here in the background. Wherever you can successfully cultivate the olive tree, that means cultivate it on a commercial scale, that's also Mediterranean climate. Really trying to find some of the things I planted and sowed here, but apart from the Hieracium pilosella, I'm not finding much. There should be more. Also here one of those beautiful German Kleingartenanlagen, no small garden areas. Basically what the homeowner association is in the US, that's the club which administers each one of those small garden areas in Germany. They are the most German Germans you can imagine. Even the rest of the Germans don't like them because they are too German. How often you have to cut your lawn, how big your cottage can be, how many fruit trees you can have, and so on and so on and so on. They are a pain. Look at that, a feral pumpkin growing here. It has even flowers. The flowers are edible. Also the vines and the young leaves are edible. The biggest treat, of course, are the fruits, but I don't see fruits here yet. However, yeah, if I wanted, I could get a bunch of edible stuff out of this plant. Another Mediterranean plant that was almost never seen here in Germany in the 20th century is the domestic pine or stone pine. And this one is ripe. I've never found edible, good seeds of the stone pine here in Germany. Maybe I should try and grab those here. Yeah. Maybe I'll do a separate video on that. And here a walnut tree. Seems like walnut season is starting because, yeah, somebody has been breaking them. A little bit shriveled up and puny, but already edible. It's interesting with the walnut. It's also a little bit on the temperature loving side. So here in Germany it wasn't very common in cold times, and it was called, well, the name walnut comes from the German Walnuss or Welche Nuss, Welsh nut. Well, no, they were not talking about Wales in Britain, but Wallis, now in Switzerland. Welsh and Wallis and so on was an old word for Italian. So this is a nut that came from the warm Italian areas. Well, in America it's called the British walnut because there it came from Britain. Well, they have also a lot of native walnuts. In Britain it's called the Persian walnut, maybe the most correct name because originally it comes from the area of Persia. In Russia it's called the Greek walnut, the Greek nut, because basically it got imported there mostly from the Balkan Peninsula, Greece, well, Balkan Peninsula and Anatolia and so on. So very interesting how the name of this thing shows its ways of transportation by the humans and also its climatic requirements. Let's see what the little gardeners have here. Apricots, pears, a lot of figs. Yeah, the fig has become a very important fruit tree here in Germany within less than a generation. It grows very fast. The fruits are great. The fruits are expensive. It is very popular. I would say nowadays Germans plant maybe about as many figs as they plant apple trees. Those little gardeners, they're throwing their shit on my, well, on my 20, well, how old would this be? 17, 18-year-old plot where I planted and sowed stuff. Yeah, no wonder you cannot see any traces of my work when they throw all this stuff on here. Usually when they fall on streets or other flat surfaces, you can find the single nuts around here. Aha, here is one. A bit on the small side, but it looks well developed. Never crack nuts with your teeth, folks. It's bad for your teeth. Oh, look at that. There is a seed in here. Oh, getting too old and fat for such. Oh. The shenanigans. Special. I'm inevitable. Oh, 2 big bags full. Not bad. Not bad at all. Look at the size of those bags. Those are big bags. Look at the size of those cones. But now we need to process them a bit. Much later, the huge pile has shrunk to almost nothing. My hands are incredibly sticky. I thought I had cleaned at least one of them, but no. It sticks to my phone. After a successful pine nut harvest, I am back on the road again. My phone is sticky from the sap. Yesterday we had 32 degrees and I would totally have gotten into this fountain, but today officially we have only 20 degrees. Well, it feels a little bit warmer, but still, nah. I prefer my bathtub today instead of my usual fountain. More mulberries, however those here were usually not very tasty. This fig tree, however, was quite a good one and quite an unusual season, but not right now. Those used to be old railroads, and when they built up this big train station, they also decommissioned a lot of the railroads and made them into bike paths and stuff. Yeah, basically a good idea. There were just a lot of details in the execution of this idea I was not so happy with, so I left the project after a couple years. There was too much fighting and not enough conservation. Well, here is the biggest small garden colony in Germany. Yes, they are also called colonies, Kleingartenkolonie. Yeah, Germans are big at colonizing. It's often very interesting to walk inside such areas, but sometimes I'm reluctant when they are gated communities. There are no gated living communities in Germany, none that I'm aware of, but often those garden communities are gated. Another very German thing. Here we have some sort of hippie commune, or how you can call it. They have a couple interesting things, and today I'd like to check on their Chinese hawthorn. Well, they have a lot of physalis here and something like a community garden in the hippie community. Let's see the American hawthorn. Oh, it's not ripe yet. Also here, you see they have left this as a historic thing. I used to pass from here so many times when I had a girlfriend in the US Army. This used to be the NATO headquarters for Europe. Basically, they planned the Yugoslav war and stuff like this from here and coordinated it from here. Extreme security measures back then, 25-ish years ago. And now children are playing there. Yeah, I totally approve of that. Barracks to playgrounds. Yeah. Oh, fix. I'm sure those hippies will not object to me liberating some of their private property. After all, I know some of them. They wouldn't have problems liberating any fruits belonging to somebody else. The figs are not completely ripe. But a couple. Good enough already. I think in a week would be the best time to start harvesting the first ones. Here is the free shop of the hippies. Yeah, I totally approve of that. Free shop and free figs next to it. By the way, the NATO headquarters for Europe, I didn't show you the main entrance. This was the back door. The main entrance is fringed by two beautiful stone eagles, and underneath those stone eagles there are two round spots with rough chisel marks, because this wasn't always the NATO headquarters, folks. It was built in 1942. And beneath the Reichseagles, there used to be two swastikas. The Americans, when they occupied this part of Germany, they removed the swastikas, but they kept the eagles, just repurposed them from German Reichseagles to, I guess, American bald eagles. Yeah, even bird's age, I guess. And now, well, the Nazis are gone, hopefully. The Americans are gone from Heidelberg, but the old eagles are still there. I wonder what they are being considered now. And this place is slowly turning into a young, modern neighborhood, hopefully with a lot of nice fruits. Already approaching my place, but I have to check on one last thing. They are kiwi vines. This year they were pruned severely. They have few fruits. Also the season's gonna be late. Still completely green the end of August. Also, it didn't work out for a lot of fruits, it seems. A lot of them are rotten. I hope to be able to bring one or two ripe ones to some friends tomorrow. But no. This is how not to prune a plant. Those used to be huge, lush green plants. Ah well. So folks, this was some little foraging in my city of Heidelberg. Stay tuned for a lot more fruit videos from the beautiful and extremely fruit-rich city of Heidelberg. And of course, don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe.